You can easily screw up a
So let me just show you most
Metal
of the
Gear
game.
Somebody's lying.
Being a kid at the time, the alert sound would make me wee just a little bit. Who is that? And it still does. You know that feeling that you get when you don't know it's coming? It's like when you were young and you were on the computer looking at something you weren't supposed to, and your mom just kind of barges in without knocking to see if you want anything for dinner. You know what I'm talking about.
At the time, I didn't know the amount of hype there was for Metal Gear Solid 2. I was one of those cats that bought Zone of Enders not to play the Metal Gear demo, but to actually play Zone of Enders. So this is the first game in the series that little Matt got a chance to play. I watched all the trailers, heard from my friends how awesome Solid Snake was, then I played the game. I see some hair-whipping blonde kid named Raiden.
The hero of Shadow Moses?
Snake is on the box and in all of the trailers. You don't see Raiden anywhere. It's kind of what happened in Kingdom Hearts 2. You play as Roxas for the first few hours and then you eventually switch to the main character Sora. Except in Metal Gear, you play as Roxas for the rest of the game. At least the Roxas bit is done in a couple hours and you get to play with 2 Keyblades. In Metal Gear, you play as Solid Snake first, hitting all the right notes, giving the player exactly what they want. Another Metal Gear Solid.
The terrorists call themselves Sons of Liberty.
Sons of Liberty?
The name of their leader is Solid Snake.
The hero of Shadow Moses? So that's why you changed my code name.
Classic gameplay like Otacon taking Mei Ling's job and offering inspirational quotes while saving. But also the big, juicy, wacky twists like Ocelot having Liquid's arm. It's like they're buttering you up, getting you nice and hyped. And then right after the tanker level, it's like you're transported to a parallel universe, where Snake is replaced with Raiden. Colonel even calls Raiden Snake straight out the gate to mess with your head. You expect to hear a rough Merle answer back, but then you hear some young kid trying to make a tough voice.
Snake, do you remember the sinking of that tanker 2 years ago?
Of course.
This whole game is dedicated to screwing with the player. I would love to play a VR game made by Kojima. And when I say Kojima throughout this review, I mean him and his team. It's much easier to say than, Konami Slay. Anytime you feel comfortable with the gameplay, he just rips the rug from under you. The random mines placed in perfect spots that were not there before, or sections of the game where being patient actually kills you or forces you to get spotted, or sneaking past hundreds of guards in the game making you think they know where you are, forcing you to make a mistake. And that's just gameplay. You have no idea what's real or not real half the time you're playing the game. I was just waiting for someone to come up to me and say, oh, this is all just a dream.
Damn, I can't hit this thing. It's like some bad dream.
It's like being in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
Jack, snap out of it.
When you're first introduced to Raiden, he's talking to the Colonel. And I noticed something I didn't pick up on as a kid. The Colonel sounds a little off, like half dry text-to-speech and half maybe they switch voice actors in the middle of recording lines?
When you want to use the codec, push the select button. When we need to reach you, contact you, the codec will beep. You have the directional microphone. According to our information,
Colonel, B1 is completely flooded from what I can see.
you'll have to swim through.
I'm fine with swimming.
When you're on the surface, you can swim in corresponding directions using the up, down, left, and right movement of the left stick.
Push the punch button to dive down from the surface.
There are so many little details like this, and like I said in MGS1, it's one of my main reasons I play the series. MGS2, however, takes it to another level, to the point that it's almost the main focus. I'll name off a few little ones. the air dryer in the bathroom's turning on, being able to shoot an ice bucket and then shoot the ice inside, watching your step because you could slip in bird poop, being able to zoom into people's faces in the codec,
It's just not enough.
shooting the walkie-talkie in the guard's hand before he can call for backup, finding a rubber ducky, shooting Vamp's knives in midair, doing a cartwheel while Raiden's naked, and then one of my favorites, Olga's armpit hair. Why? I mean, the game has come a long way from the PS1 graphics of MGS1. Snake's features that would be iconic for the rest of the series is brought to the big screen, which makes the Raiden swap even worse. Bye-bye potato heads, hello cool rain effects, and 3D codec conversations, now with video, which is like the equivalent to a children's book. The pictures are there just to keep the kids engaged. The only problem I had with the graphics are the cutscene animations. It just doesn't hold up sometimes. I don't know what Snake's body language is trying to tell me here. He looks like he's trying to eat his chin. Also, Snake looks weird without his headband. It brings out his eyes just a little bit too much. Other than that, the game looks great. It's actually what you would think an upgraded version of Metal Gear Solid would look like. But it seems like looks is not the only thing they brought over from the last game. With every Metal Gear game I play, I see a lot of the same thing, but also a refinement of those ideas, which brings a freshness to familiar gameplay. For example, the way Snake interacts with guards have evolved over the years, from only being able to punch them to being alerted by sound to seeing your footsteps in the snow. Now you can hold them up and jack their stuff face to face. They also can see beyond their little vision cones and search the area they thought you were in. One time I kicked the guard off the ledge, and when he woke up, he didn't go back to his routine. He was out for blood, and he proceeded to set off the alarm. It just adds a bit of personality to them instead of them just being the dumb guards that walk a set path. You can actually hear them check in with their boss. Like, if this was going down, that's how you would think the guards would act. It adds immersion and butt tension, but also patience, and not just run out there because you don't want to play hide and seek anymore. You might think it's just too long to wait, but me? I'll just pull out my phone and start playing with my cats. This is still a hardcore stealth game, and when you get caught, they call in them goons, and you can't just run out the area like the last game. You either stand and fight, or run and hide somewhere. My favorites are the lockers, because I'm never by myself. But if you're not careful, enemies may find your secret hiding spot. It's hard not to be impressed by a game made 15 years ago. They even added a little clearing camera, which you would think it wouldn't add as much tension as not being able to see anything, but seeing where they are and just escaping is so rewarding in a stealth game. I found myself being more patient, learning patrols, taking out guards, putting them in lockers. Because if you leave them on the ground, another guard will come and wake them up, and depending on how you put them down there, they will set off the alarm. With all this detail, it makes the satisfaction great when you pull it off nicely. It trains you to play like a spy would. Now you can aim your weapons in first person. The controller sensitivity can make it really challenging to land a headshot, especially during the sniper mission. And you want to land a headshot. Shooting anywhere else in the body will take multiple shots, while the headshot will always one-shot kill or put them to sleep. So you can go on a non-lethal playthrough, which will change your rank at the end of the game. Which reminds me of how they introduced this in the Olga boss fight. Snake starts off the tanker level with only a trank gun, all the way until he meets Olga for the first time. In the cutscene, she talks about being pregnant, and that's when you first see the two bars at the top left of the screen. One is the HP bar and the other is the knockout bar. Then after that boss fight, you receive your first gun. It's like saying to the player, you have a choice not to kill everyone, including bosses. Now make the choice for yourself. Have you seen how brutal these guards are? I don't care about ranks, I'm snapping everyone's neck. The camera is close again, but it seems more of a style choice than a limitation, deliberately placing the camera at different angles to add tension of the unknown. You are also forced to use the first person mode to survey the area and look for those annoying nodes, which unlock the radar. It adds a fair bit of challenge and encourages you to explore each strut. I didn't mind as much because I like the level design for the big shell. Sure, it's not as diverse as Metal Gear 2 or Metal Gear Solid 1, but you instantly get familiar with with the map, making backtracking more enjoyable instead of a deep breath and a sigh. All of Big Shell's displayed on a map so you can't get confused on where you are. And each strut has a different layout, so it doesn't become as old quickly as it could have been, using all the same colors. Part of it is because enemy placement often changes to keep you on your toes. This is important because the first half of the Raiden saga, you're running around the same areas disarming bombs. If these explosives weren't in such clever places, I would have said this whole section of the game bombed. Yeah, I said it. It feels a little out of place having to backtrack the whole map just to defuse bombs. It left a mixed impression on me, but it does set up the mother of all clever bomb placements, the IR sensors on the bridge. The last half of Metal Gear games always seem to lean towards switching up the gameplay and set pieces. In this section, you have to disable all the control panels to turn off the explosives. This is a good puzzle. It's everything I enjoyed about disabling the bombs in one location. The bomb behind the flag had me scratching my head for a minute, but there was a poor use of the bomb mechanic. The Fat Man boss fight.
Life is short.
During the boss fight, Fat Man lazily slaps bombs in easy places and adds a time limit. It's more wasting your time than adding any challenge. It's already hard to aim in first person, but to hit this big grenade's little head, it's almost impossible unless you knock him down with bullets or claymores. It's almost like the Vulcan fight in Metal Gear Solid. The map layout is even the same, but except you don't have all your weapons yet, and that's the best part of that fight. With such a build up to Fat Man's great bomb placement, you would have thought that he would have been a better boss. The only time I enjoyed Fat Man is when he pooped out the last bomb. He was clever at the end, at least.
Laugh and grow fat.
I didn't enjoy the other bosses either, specifically Dead Cell. They seem so basic compared to what you're used to in the Metal Gear series. Part of it was because the bosses this time around are not fleshed out with backstory and purpose for existing. It's more flashy cutscenes and mysterious powers. In MGS1, you understood what Psycho Mantis and Sniper Wolf's role was. Even Decoy Octopus made an impact and he was only in the game for a couple minutes. Like Fortune whines just as much as Raiden, but at least she gets a little explanation at the end. I guess I just missed the long touching moments where Snake holds his kill in his arms as their life flashes before their eyes. Kind of like Assassin's Creed without the Matrix thing. Saul does get some time in the spotlight, but that just shows how ridiculous his character is. He's a perfect clone of Big Boss that used to be the president of the United States, but he got picked to be a part of S3 just because his relationship with Raiden? And another thing, Snake was having nightmares after fighting Big Boss in the first Metal Gear, and he burned him alive in the second Metal Gear, but he didn't notice that he was the president of the United States? Come on! I guess I wanted the over-the-top wackiness, so I shouldn't complain, but damn, I'm in for a ride.
Brothers! Liquid!
In terms of gameplay, the Vamp boss fight, you're basically a turret. You can't kill Fortune, but it would have been cool to try to, and you already heard about Fat Man. Olga was a good first boss fight, and that was because the meaning behind that fight. And they just don't raise the bar beyond that. One boss fight in particular I had fun playing was the final Metal Gear fight. Even though it had some of the same basic mechanics of the other bosses where you just point and shoot, the way the 3 Metal Gear Rays just loom over you and take turns in the ring like some wrestling match of never-ending mechs, it gave a feeling of pointlessness, which lands the moment perfectly. Otherwise, I would have hated Raiden when right after the fight, he didn't try to run or save Olga when she sacrificed herself to buy him time. It's funny that Olga, the cyborg ninja of MGS2, is the one who sacrificed herself to save the player. Just like in Metal Gear Solid. Ames having a sudden heart attack, fighting a Harrier similar to the Liquid fight, the cyborg ninja calling himself Deep Throat, meeting another Otacon including the peeing, and many other elements from the last game getting reused like he did with Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear Solid. It felt like Kojima got forced to make another Metal Gear. I mean, Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear Solid's endings were pretty final. At the end of MGS1, you literally drive into the sunset. Then I saw there's actually a list of times he said he wanted to work on something else, which gave a little backstory. Later on, you find out it was all on purpose. It was all a part of the Illuminati Patriots' plan to recreate the events of Shadow Moses. But there might be some real meaning there. You know, he gave the people what they wanted. another Metal Gear Solid, but it feels a little frustratingly made. He shoves in multiple incoherent, complex meanings that have you thinking well after you finish the game. It's strange to see the faults and then see how much love they poured into the rest of the game. All the little details I mentioned before doesn't even scratch the surface. There are secrets like seeing Snake travel in a cardboard box, and finding dirty magazines by using Emma's parrot, or even extra dialogue, like Rose and the Colonel scolding Raiden for looking for Stillman in the woman's bathroom. It's also crazy that this is the only moment that the Colonel actually seems human?
Even AWOL, a normal guy, wouldn't go into a woman's bathroom. You're the only one I know who would. You're like really strange.
Rosemary, settle down.
But
It's all right. Raiden, Rosemary is right. You should probably look someplace else. I can really sympathize with you there, though.
what, sir?
Nothing. Raiden, that's that. Return to your duties.
You guys are unbelievable.
With all these extra bits they put in and moving to the new hardware, you would think they would allow luxuries like pausing cutscenes. But besides issues, long cutscenes, and cyborg ninjas, there are other references to MGS1 that fit quite nicely. One scene in particular is when Otacon loses his sister. Because of the animations, it could take you out of the experience of feeling sorry for Otacon here. But then they remind you of what happened to Sniper Wolf in the last game. It almost legitimizes the scene, like making you feel sorry for Otacon. And if that's not enough, it gets really dark when Otacon's sister's parrot starts repeating Emma's last words.
Hal, I miss you. Hal, I miss you. I miss you. I miss you.
This whole scene is one of my favorites because you see Otacon dealing with a hard loss, but you see that he's still focused at the task at hand. Even though he's all up in his feels, he knows that he has to finish the mission. It shows that he has toughened up since the last game. Plus, this scene also shows how tight Otacon's relationship with Snake is. We got a taste of it during the tanker level, but this just cements it. Because Emma was a cute character, you can argue that Emma herself was strong enough to add weight to her own death, but she was put into one of my least favorite sections of the game. Here they combine an underwater area, backtracking, and an escort mission. All of my favorite things. Pro tip, when she decides to take a break and sit down, pelvic thrust her to skip the long get up animation. I noticed something once I met Emma, the overuse of codec conversations. Some just don't need to be in the codec. It seems like they had so much story and they couldn't animate all the cutscenes, so they just tossed everything else in the codec. It's like meeting up with a friend just to talk to them on the phone while you're right next to each other. This is one of those times where the gameplay warped how I felt about a character, and if it wasn't for Otacon, I would have felt nothing at her death scene. At first glance, Raiden is an emo kid who doesn't want to talk about his feelings. They purposely establish early on that he's just not Snake, and they remind you of it many times, like when the president goes to cop a field, or when Snake has a bigger health bar, or how Snake totally wrecks through enemies at the end when you can barely control your sword. That's supposed to make you feel cool. I guess I'll just wait for Platinum's game. Snake, the smooth, casual flirter, and Raiden, the one who can't even hold a relationship. He's the opposite of Snake, and it's easy to hate his character, especially when the game is hinting at Snake either being dead or being the big boss of the terrorists. Kojima continues to screw with you by having Snake himself tell Raiden that Snake is dead. And a little part of you almost believes Big Eye Snake because there's no way Snake could be easily manhandled by Vamp. In a world where Liquid is still alive by an implanted arm and a vampire can run across the water like Jesus, anything is possible.
Hey, what's that? It's running on water.
But Raiden's character almost seems like it's supposed to be the player, being such a blank character. When you reach the Twilight Zone section, you even hear Colonel saying you're playing a role-playing game. later even spams the mission failed screen, which is also different from Snake's classic game over screen. In the end, because he's so empty, it makes him unrelatable. I feel like Snake was more relatable at MGS1 just by the way the story was told, and Snake was doing his own thing. I would have rather Raiden just be a character with more to say than I don't want to talk about it. I began to like Raiden when he revealed he was a child soldier, and it links so well with the moments with Rose when she's talking about going inside of his room and everything just being empty of anything personal.
Only a bed and a small desk. It looked like a prison cell.
I still rather play Snake though. Sure, the pro cartwheels are nice, but Snake is just a more entertaining action hero.
See you in hell, Liquid.
Can we just, talk about the Colonel real quick? Let's get back to him. All throughout the game, I didn't understand this guy's actions on top of his voice being messed up. If you just came from MGS1, you can totally see that something is wrong with the Colonel.
When we need to contact you, the codec will beep. When we need to reach you, contact you, the codec will beep.
In the back of your mind, you gotta be thinking, why is the Colonel not wanting to talk with his homie Snake? He even tries to put doubt in Raiden's mind about Snake, trying to keep him on track. He obviously put Raiden's girlfriend Rose on Mei Ling duty just to manipulate him further. And you don't even know if Rose is real. At the end, you see that Rose is not an AI, but they don't really explain that Rose was switched out for an AI near the end of the game. And it makes you think crazy thoughts, like if she was replaced at the end, then why not during the rest of the game? And why is one of the names of the Metal Gear Rays Rose? What the hell? Kojima successfully trolled too much, it's hard to tell what's real. And he just keeps going with it. When you enter the Twilight Zone, the Colonel starts confessing personal things like being probed by aliens.
Raiden, something happened to me last Thursday when I was driving home.
While he shares more and more, you can see VR patterns at the foot of the soldiers. It's a constant mind cluster all the way to the end. When it was finally explained that it was the Patriots, it reassured me that I wasn't crazy. And of course, just like the last Metal Gear, they wrap up all those mysteries for a satisfying ending. Mostly. MGS1's story was definitely tighter and easier to digest after one playthrough. MGS2, that's the type of game you sit in a dark room and think about for a while. I just wish they cut to credits right after Raiden saw Rose. Throughout, you're forced to watch this relationship implode in front of your eyes. You almost don't want to save because your baby mama's gonna start tripping. It starts off cute, but then you get subtle hints that Rose wants Raiden to know the real her, like when he asks why she doesn't want to go to the restaurant. Then she accuses Raiden of dating her just because she's pretty, and he just wants to show her off. It gets so crazy to the point that they hint at Raiden hitting her.
It was the first time you ever raised your hand against me.
So no, I don't want to know any more about Raiden and Rose and if they get a happy ending. Watching those conversations made me feel like a silent therapist.
Because of Raiden, it could totally pass for a spin-off game. Probably one of the best, worst troll sequels of all time. But I respect it, because it was definitely worth experiencing. I like how you can feel the realness in the dialogue. Like when Sawdust says, "I want to leave my mark on the world." Like, you can also feel some of that creative frustration. It reminds me of what I said in the MGS review.
The part that made it memorable was that you can give up at any time but sacrifice Meryl. It added a real physical element to the scene that makes you care a bit more. Like, you know it's a game. I mean, the game makes sure that you know multiple times that it's a game. But somehow these sections, like looking at the back of the game box for a frequency or plugging the controller into the second port for the Psycho Mantis fight, it makes you more engaged in what's happening on the screen. That just makes it freaking personal, if that makes any sense.
Even though it's just a video game, it can still affect you. I think that might have been his point. I don't know, because the guy's crazy. Oh man, these games remind me of the golden age of console gaming. You know, where not every game that came to the console was being ported to PC. You know, where consoles actually had exclusives. I can't wait to see what's next, because the ball's on Kojima for making this a sequel. Homeboy's a gangster.